One. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Ground Level's Wednesday Wisdom. Today I am chatting to the wonderful David Bruce from New Life Spilsby. Dave, it's great to have you with us, and we're
Yeah,
talking about
Jason.
the topic of engaging with your community online today. So, Dave, why don't you tell us a bit about who you are and what it is you do?
Okay, well, thank you, Jason. So my name is David Bruce, and I'm the youth pastor and community outreach manager over at the New Life Centre in Spilsby. And I also do work cross-site. I'm based at the Storehouse Church in Skegness as well, where I assist the management team there. What do we do? So a lot of what we do is community outreach. It's reaching our communities through mental health support, SEN, youth and community work, debt management, anything that affects our local community. Food banks is something that I oversee. When it comes to the church side of things, and I mean, as in like a biblical teaching sense, I'm responsible for the youth. And we use that sense quite broadly in Spilsby because we're a small town, so it's not 30 for myself. No children's pastor, no young adult pastor. Uh, some of our young adults think they're quite blessed when at 28 they're still classed as youth, so it's great. But yes, that side of things I oversee as well. And the projects that we were in Spilsby, we're trying to emulate now over in Skegness, and we're trying to create a hub for mental health support alongside, their extensive program of, wellness and restore and food banks, which has been running in Skegness for many years now.
Great stuff. Well, I know from experience over the years of hearing stories from you guys that you do a fantastic job with all of the projects that you're running.
Thank
So,
you.
why don't you tell us what engaging with your local community looked like before the pandemic kind of even started? So, before any lockdowns or any restrictions came in place, and you had to kind of push things online, what did engaging with the local community look like for you guys?
Okay, yeah. So we've always said that we've been very fortunate that our street outreach has a roof over its head. So Spilsby, we've been our home has been the old grammar school for the last 10 years, and it's such a wonderful building which is quite central to our town. It has many classrooms, it has many spaces that we can reach out and offer different projects. So in an average week, we would see 300 people come through our doors, and that'd be everything from art and craft as an aid for mental health support, social evenings for those with special educational needs, especially with having like Lincoln's Community Trust and Boulevard Care on our doorstep. We became home to the youth service for the time when Lincolnshire County Council pulled out about 8 or 9 years ago. So we had about 4 or 5 youth projects on the go, as well as being home to places like Woodlands Academy for their outreach for the youth offending team, to have a satellite base for Lincolnshire Probation Service. We wanted a holistic overview to community, and that wasn't just behind closed doors and having services and prayer meetings and Bible studies, which are all so important. But we wanted a way to reach our community in order to demonstrate the love of Jesus Christ to them. And sometimes that's just by having an open door policy, inviting people in for a coffee, meeting someone where they're at, because everyone has different needs. And it was just a way of, come on in, you're welcome, we love you, we want to support you. And, it was like a gradual approach to coming alongside our community. But, some of that as well took place out there in the community. We didn't want to just do things behind doors. So, we made quite strong links with like our local council, Spilsby Rotary Club, the Spilsby Show, our local schools, housing associations. We wanted to ensure that, we didn't want to have all these fingers in the pie for no reason, but we wanted to ensure that we were reaching every aspect of our community. So we wanted people to know who we were, what we do, why we do it, and how can we help you. And that's something we strive to achieve is, why we're here. Firstly, to demonstrate the love of Jesus Christ to our community, and why, because we want to help you, want to come alongside you. So it was very hands-on before the pandemic, Jason. It was very, face-to-face group work
Yeah.
out there in the community, helping and supporting wherever we could.
Did
So
you do
when
any remote support before lockdown hit, Dave, or was it all kind of face to face stuff that you were doing?
so before the lockdown, yeah, we had probably 2 or 3 messenger groups that we'd set up for people just to, say hi, how you doing, ask for support. Maybe like if someone was sick one week, they could still, ask for some encouragement or come alongside. But pretty much it was all done in person. Uh, there was none of this, put it that way.
Yeah. So I guess the big question is how did that change for you guys, and how are you engaging with your local community online?
Okay. Yeah. So, well, March 17th, that was the day that we decided to close the actual building. And we had to think very quickly on how we were going to maintain relationships with those that have, come alongside us and entered our building for support along the years. So, like, first and foremost, we had to ensure that people knew how we were going to make those changes. So we would, we produced a leaflet that went from door to door, just basically saying, what the church was offering, how we were going to come alongside people. We became very active with our emergency team. So sometimes we've got hubs, some was run by the local council. Quite quickly in Spilsby, an emergency team formed of councillors, of community projects, of how we could reach our community. So, and that was all done on WhatsApp. We worked quite heavily with the Lincolnshire Community Foundation, ensuring that we could get funding because as a small church, as a small charity, we rely on grants, we relied on public donations. Some of our projects paid subs. All that just stopped, And as an old grammar school as well, we had many classrooms which we used to rent out to different organisations. Again, all that stopped. And it's like, how do we ensure that when the time comes, we can re-enter the building? So again, it was a lot of footwork online, emails back and forth. But the bulk of it came when we started. Obviously, first thing we went to was Zoom. And as we know, I'd never really heard of Zoom up until the pandemic. I'd heard somebody in our church saying they were going for a Zoom meeting with another church, and I just thought that was the name of the course. I didn't really, it was actually an application. I was quite naive, to be fair. It just shows that with age, sometimes you have to learn a few things. But yeah, quite quickly we learned, that Zoom was the first port of call, and we did that in a number of ways. So, like our youth and community, our youth groups, we would offer Zoom youth clubs, meeting Mondays and Wednesdays, and coming alongside them, having quizzes, and doing projects online that they could take part in and still feel part of something. But again, we learned very quickly that things only have a certain life. And again, when, especially for young people, when they're at home and they're doing Google Classrooms and then they're coming home and then they've got a Zoom youth club, they didn't want it. They wanted interaction. It's all great coming alongside somebody on a screen, but if you've been on it all day, it can get tiring.
Yeah.
Which, in a way can be a blessing because, we saw a lot more young people, interacting with the activity packs. That was our next step. And I know we're talking about online, but again, we had to adapt. So we applied to Children in Need, and we got funding to produce 300 packs for those 0 to 19-year-olds. So again, they had something physical, but then we were backing that up with videos as well.
Yeah.
So our next thing, and I'm talking about youth here, but we did it across the board. I'm just using this as an example as one of our projects. Then we would produce YouTube videos on how to make what was in those packs, or we would have challenges, weekly challenges, where our youth workers would come together and set a challenge for the young people. And the reason why I went to YouTube is because they can watch that at their leisure. They don't have to be at their computer at a set time on a set day to join in. They can watch it as and when they want to. But we still offered Zoom. We still offered these support groups. I know there were some weeks where there was me and the other members of the staff just having a conversation with ourselves. But the thing is, we still offered them because you never know. It's just like church or a project. If your door's open, you never know who's going to walk in. And we never knew who was going to join the meetings as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Zoom was a big one for us. But then what we did notice is obviously when we was reaching out to our local community, people were using other things. People were using Google Rooms, people were using Microsoft Teams. So it was again a way of how do we ensure that we can reach everybody. So it was having members of our team joining different forums, joining different community groups that were out there, and ensuring that we were getting all the information we needed to share. So our Facebook, it's always been quite prominent. It's been quite up there with how we get things across. But it was just making sure that we did, post regularly, that we was having interactive posts, asking questions on our posts, trying to get people just to interact with each other. And again, that had its life. But I think it's when we got towards the end of the summer that and people were allowed outside again that it was like, oh, we've lost our online presence. People are enjoying the sun. People are not joining these meetings as much as they were. So for a while, we did try to meet people where they were at. We were putting people on the streets, uh, but also having the online as well. So it was complementing each other. Um, it's it's something that we found easy but hard. Easy in the fact that Zoom, anyone can download it, but it was hard for yourself when you were just sat there looking at a screen, and after a couple of months, people weren't interacting because they'd got bored, or it was just too much for them to take in, too much screen time.
So would you say, Dave, that obviously one of the first important thing is almost assume that no one knows what you're doing? Like assume that the community's got no idea what you're providing and kind of start from that place of, getting into the different Facebook groups or whatever means communities are using to communicate. I know quite a few local communities have their own sort of community forums, don't they? And tapping into those things to talk about what you're doing and what you're providing. Have you seen many people engage through platforms like that?
Yeah, so for again, I'm speaking across the board now for Spilsby and Skegness. Spilsby and Skegness have their own like community groups on Facebook where the support is out there. So it was ensuring that whatever we was posting, it wasn't just on our Facebook page. You can't rely on people to share. People have all good intentions. People say, "I'll share that later," but it doesn't always happen. So we was ensuring that we were sharing it to these community platforms as well. That we was sharing it with local organisations, so joining whatever forums we could. And one thing over the years, especially in Spilsby, and I'll speak primarily about Spilsby because it's where I've been based for the last 10 years, it's joining those groups in our community, being part of them. So we're quite active within Spilsby Rotary Club. We're part of the Spilsby Show Committee. We work quite heavily with our town council. I myself am a director at the local academy and our housing association. So whatever we did, we ensured that they were copied into it, either via email or in messenger groups. Or we'd ask them to, if they would like to have a representative, join our meetings and come alongside us. One thing that we set up probably only about a month ago, really, was we realised that a lot of people weren't aware, like you say, of the services that were available to them still, that they could still access online. So I put my cap on one day and thought, how do we get this information across to people? And we set up something called the Community Network. Now, the Community Network is based on WhatsApp, and we've invited members of our town council, the Good Neighbour Scheme, but we've gone a lot wider than that. We've asked people from wellbeing links, social prescribers, so the link workers. We've got members of the Lincolnshire Suicide Forum. We've got community mental health. Local SENCO, special educational coordinators from schools, people from housing associations. We asked them all to come on board into this community WhatsApp group so that if something was going well within our communities, that we could just put out a message there, and within an instance, they could filter it to their groups, into their groups, into their groups. And that's one thing we found, that, even though we've been in the community for 10 years, people would still say to us, "Oh, we didn't know you was there. We didn't know you did this. We didn't know you do that." It's how you constantly try to reinforce what you're doing. It's all like I say, it's all well putting it on your Facebook page, but if people don't like your Facebook page and no one shared it, they're not going to see it.
Yeah,
and that's why it's a case of just getting it out there in as many platforms as you can, in many different ways as you can, to whoever you can.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And then you talked about kind of keeping it fresh and, making sure what you're doing isn't the same all of the time. You're changing things up. And I think that's a continual challenge for us all, isn't it, to know how to do that. And as we are kind of sat here at this point in time, as we're, still in restrictions, thinking about how to continually keep things fresh and keep things so that people are engaging with them and want to engage in them. Is there any kind of things that you've learned as kind of techniques or tools to kind of keep yourself thinking of ways to freshen things up?
Yeah, I think for us, the main thing is, never dismiss an idea. We've been so passionate about, getting the message out there. And, I know for a lot of people, it's all about returning to the building. And, I've seen it across many churches where people have been so eager to get back in the building. But then like I said, we noticed, I've said before, Jason, that we were getting people joining our Sunday morning gathering from all over the world. And we thought, are these one-offs? But they were returning week in, week out, and we just couldn't understand why somebody was joining little old New Life Spilsby from Australia or Uganda. But they did the return week in, week out. So it's like whatever we do, we need to ensure that we don't lose those, well, family members, as we call them now, that we've grown to love and come alongside during the pandemic. So if something's not working, and like we've seen, like with the Zoom community meetings and so on and so forth, is that every now and then offer one, So like this evening, for example, we had members within our community who said, we're just feeling really disconnected. I was like, well, would you like us to do a Zoom meeting? And they're like, yeah, that's great. So for us, it was a case of, we went through the lockdown offering it every week at a set time. Whereas now it's like, okay, let's dip in and out. Let's not totally dismiss Zoom because we've gone on to this forum or that forum, but let's offer it every now and then so that people can still have that option of joining it. And what we've noticed is that when it's a one-off event or when it's something that is not as frequent, that people are putting it in the diaries, and that's the thing as well, giving people notice. If you're going to have a meeting, make sure 2 or 3 weeks notice, but reinforce it 2 or 3 days before as well, just as a recap. And that's where we found our messenger groups and WhatsApp groups are really important. Somebody will drop a message in there asking for a Zoom, we'll plan it, but then it's ensuring that on that day we're like, guys, we've got the Zoom meeting tonight, we'd love you to join us, blah, blah, blah. And again, it just reinforces what we're doing. But one of the things that we created this week actually is that fact that we knew that the centre was going to be closing, especially when we're into tier 4 as well in Lincolnshire. One thing we've never done, we've had generic groups, but we actually created a virtual centre just on Messenger. We opened a Messenger group which was for anybody to join. Instead of it being specific for mental health, special needs, church, we said, okay, this is the New Life Centre, because on a daily basis, anyone could walk through our door. And you know what? We've had so many people request to join it who have maybe never been to the centre, but it's just been a safe place and to come along. They're sharing pictures, they're talking, they're telling jokes. For some people, it's all about reducing that isolation and knowing that there's a safe space that they can just tap into as and when they want to. So I think for us as well, it's thinking outside the box, not just thinking, okay, we're appealing to this person, because you never know who is struggling out there, who needs the help, who needs the support.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just about developing really and just keeping your ear to the ground and knowing what else is out there as well. Because again, for us, it's don't reinvent the wheel. If something's happening somewhere else in another church, we'll signpost you. It's not about us. We must remember that it's His church. Jesus is building His church, and we are part of a greater body. So I know we're talking about online, but during the lockdown, directly across from New Life is St James's Church of England Church, and they would open their doors from first thing in the morning to the last thing at night, and just an empty building. Obviously, there's nothing, there was nothing real that you could steal unless they were going to take out a 400-year-old stone pulpit. But the doors were open, and people were saying to us, well, you're allowed to open for private prayer. Why aren't you opening? And it's like, well, at the moment, we just don't have the facilities, or we feel that we should be opening. And like we said, isn't it? Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that the wider body, I think, has come to embrace is that we've got brothers and sisters in other areas. Let's tap into that. St James is open. You can go and sit there for private prayer. I'll come and join you over there. But for us to open our doors, which is a lot more tech savvy and a lot more equipment, it's a bit more risky to open your doors and just leave them open.
Yeah.
But again, it's like tapping into yourselves, tapping into the the resources that ground level have produced and provided. I know many of our church got so much out of the online one event. They were, as we all know, many people were gutted that they couldn't attend, but they still felt part of it, being able to access it. And I know some people, they've never done anything like that before, and it was just a breath of fresh air for them to be included. And I think that's the thing about social media and online is that somebody doesn't have to travel 45 minutes to Lincoln to go and watch a moment's worship evening. Yeah. They've been able to watch it online, and again, for the first time, people have been able to access these things that they were never normally could.
Yeah, oh, that's so good, Dave. Well done. I think such great wisdom there for us to kind of take and digest. Are there any kind of real challenges that you guys have overcome and kind of conquered, or has it all been fairly plain sailing?
No. I think the first thing is that, we got into this mindset of online, and be honest, sometimes you do forget those that can't access online. And it became apparent that we did have people like, no, because we were still doing telephone, that were saying, no, I miss the services. How can we join in? So no, speaking for the storehouse, for example, Dave and Diz Middleton, they were recording their sermons, but then Dave was putting them onto CDs and ensuring that the CDs were going out to those that didn't have access to watching it online. So again, it was just a different media, a different way of getting that message across. It's like, okay, we haven't forgotten you. We towards the end of lockdown, we still had some people again don't have CD players. A lot of people don't. So for the first time in a long time, we produced a church newsletter. The good old fashioned newsletter that you spent every pew when you walked in on Sunday morning, it returned, just saying what was out there. And even though a lot of it was saying what was online and what we could do, there was still scripture, there was still telephone numbers, there was still, just little things like saying, we are here to support you, we are with you. So they were going out to people, to the elderly, to those that couldn't access online services. So again, it's not about forgetting the old ways, but it's how we can embrace them and include them with the new.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, that's something that we do forget sometimes, is that not everybody is tech savvy. Even with us, coming online and ensuring that we can make it the best that it can be. All it takes is for your Wi-Fi to go down, and then you've lost your service. You've lost whatever meeting you've got. So it's how can we back it up? How can we ensure that we're still going to get that message across to people in different, in different ways? So for us, it was overcoming having this multitude of ways of reaching people, really. And it can be a lot of hard work. But if you've got a team that are dedicated to serving your community, it can make it a lot easier.
And it's striking that balance, isn't it, between not letting the technology be a reason not to do something. So, if you've only got your iPhone, use your iPhone. That's better than not doing anything, isn't it? But, it's...
Absolutely. I know one of the things that people have laughed about every Sunday morning now is that in Spilsby, obviously, we're upgrading our system at the moment, but we're still recording on a mobile phone, and it's worked absolutely fine. And Richard and Sally, who are have done a lot of the Sunday morning gatherings from their house. The bit of the joke is that Sally uses a Bluetooth speaker for the worship during communion, and it's become such a blessing because it makes us all laugh. Because they'll be halfway through praying, and all of a sudden you hear this powering on, or powering off, because the Bluetooth speaker's going. And in the grand scheme of things, we want things to be perfect, don't we? We want things to run smoothly. But that has just lifted the moment sometimes on Sunday morning where, we're sat there with a mobile phone and a Bluetooth speaker, and it just makes you smile. It's real. We're real people. We're not on a set. We're not, we're not this multi mega church, and they're all fair and well, and they all have their purpose in life. But it's also good to remember, as long as we're getting the gospel out, as long as we're reaching people, as long as we're interacting and demonstrating the love of Jesus Christ to our community, that can take place in a multitude of ways, and with whatever we've got on our doorstep and what we've got to hand to get that out there.
Yeah, no, that's so good, Dave. And finally today, what do you think will change for you guys when you go back to being able to do face-to-face support? Do you think this will have changed the way you do that, or do you think it'll be very much back to what it was before?
No, I definitely don't think it's going to go back to the way it was before. I think we're definitely going in a new way now. So for us, and it might sound cliche, but we are a church. It's ensuring that we stay steadfast in God's word, that we are ensuring that we're listening to Him and not to man, and that we, do it through His Spirit. But for us, we want to ensure that we don't lose those that have joined our online community. They're just as much part of the church now as those that attend in person. The families that are joining us from Australia every Sunday morning, the families from Uganda that are coming on board, those members that have moved away from our church and have not found a church to interact with that are joining us online. It's ensuring, we need to ensure that we reach them. So I think it's going to complement each other. The fact that we can still have gatherings in person, but we can still reach those online. So it's ensuring that that the two audiences complement each other, because you have got two audiences. You've got those that are sat there in person, you've got those that are online at home, and it's how you ensure that you address everybody as a corporate body, that no one's left out. So yeah, I think there are going to be challenges, especially when when they say, right, okay, COVID restrictions have been dropped, you can go back to your normal ways. How do we ensure then that we don't forget about the messenger groups we set up? We don't forget about the WhatsApp groups that are there. Because there'll be some people who won't go back straight away. There'll be some people who may never go back. Maybe some people get ill. Maybe some people, obviously, or getting elderly, who have got to that point in their life where they were ready to stay at home and they wouldn't have been attending anyway. It's how we still ensure that we reach those and that nobody gets left out.
Yeah, that's so good, Dave. So I think some great points in there, isn't there? Assuming no one knows what you're doing, getting the word out there in whatever way you can, and using as many different platforms as you can to do it. Keeping the stuff that you're doing fresh as possible. Maybe not being too routined, maybe mixing it up quite a bit seems to work quite well. And then use what you've got in your hands. Don't let anything be a barrier to you providing that support to your local community. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, don't reinvent the wheel. If another church is doing something, tap into it. I'm pretty sure no church will mind you using their material or nicking one of their ideas if it's working. And just to finish on, something that we found really beneficial was at Christmas. We noticed that Hope House in Mayborn, nativity. People can't come in at the moment, but they're still seeing something visual. So, so our men's group made something so simple as, a big piece of ply board, painted it, put Jesus, the light of the world, and they made a manger, which we filled with 100 Why Jesus books and just asked people to take them. And you know what? The box is nearly empty. We've only found a couple laid on the street down the road. Again, something so simple as just please take one, which we would never have thought of if we hadn't seen another church doing something similar. So again, share what you're doing, put it on your Facebook pages, share it with you guys at ground level so you can share it with us out there in the wider community, because you never know what works for somebody, what always works for somebody else. But then what does work for likes of you, we might be able to tap into and think that's just what we need.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, thank you for joining us for Wednesday Wisdom, David.
Thank you, Jason.
Back to you. And thank you all for watching and for joining us today. We hope that you've taken some wisdom away and that you'll be able to apply this to engaging with your own community. Thank you.